October 12, 1964, Georgetown, Washington, D.C. A beautiful Monday afternoon. 43-year-old Mary Pinchot Meyer set out for her daily walk along the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal. She was a painter, a mother, a socialite in Washington's most powerful circles. Mary Pinchot Meyer was murdered at close range. Nothing was stolen. No witnesses came forward. But Mary wasn't just any victim. She had been the secret lover of President John F. Kennedy. And she kept a diary that detailed everything. Within hours of her murder, the CIA's most powerful spy master was inside her home, searching for that diary. He found it, and then it disappeared. A man was tried and acquitted. The murder weapon was never found. The case remains officially unsolved to this day. But what if I told you this wasn't a random killing? What if I told you Mary Meyer knew secrets that could destroy the most powerful people in America? Secrets about the president's plan to dismantle the CIA, about LSD experiments in the White House, about a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of government. Mary Pinchot Meyer didn't just know where the bodies were buried. She became one of them. This is the story they tried to bury, the woman they silenced, and the truth that refuses to die. Now, before we go any further, I need to ask you something. Where are you watching this from right now? What time is it where you are? I want you to drop your location and the time down in the comments. And if what you just heard got your attention, if you're sitting there thinking, I need to know what really happened, then go ahead and hit that like button for me. It helps more people discover this story. While you're at it, subscribe to this channel. Click that bell. Because the stories we uncover here, they're the ones that were meant to stay buried. The ones your evening news never told you about. The ones that matter. And here's what I really want you to do. Share this. Share it with a friend who lived through the 60s. Share it with someone in your book club. Share it with your kids or grandkids who need to understand that history isn't always what they taught us in school. Mary Pinchot Meyer was silenced 60 years ago, but her story? It's not going to stay silent, not if we have anything to say about it. Now, let's talk about who Mary really was. To understand why Mary Meyer had to die, you need to understand who she was. And Mary Pinchot wasn't just anybody. Born in 1920, Mary was American aristocracy. Her father, Amos Pinchot, was a wealthy attorney and political reformer. Her mother descended from one of Pennsylvania's founding families. Mary grew up in luxury, educated at the finest schools, groomed for a life of privilege and power. She attended Vassar College, one of the Seven Sisters. She was stunning, intelligent, and she moved through the world with a confidence that came from never having to ask permission. In 1945, she married Cord Meyer, Jr. He was a war hero, a Yale graduate who'd lost an eye in the Pacific. They were the golden couple, young, beautiful, idealistic. They believed they could change the world. But then Cord joined the CIA. Not just any position, he became one of the agency's key operatives in psychological warfare and covert operations. Mary had married into the intelligence community without even knowing it. Their Georgetown home became a gathering place for spies, diplomats, and politicians. They had 3 sons, but in 1956, tragedy struck. Their 9-year-old son, Michael, was hit by a car and killed. Mary was shattered. The marriage, already strained by Cord's CIA work and his drinking, began to crumble. By 1958, they divorced. Mary took custody of the boys. And she did something remarkable for a woman of her generation and class. She chose independence. She didn't remarry. She didn't fade into the background. Instead, Mary Pinchot Meyer became an artist. She rented a studio on the C&O Canal, the same towpath where she'd later die. She painted abstract works, bold and experimental. She read philosophy. She hosted salons. And she lived exactly as she pleased. In 1960s Washington, this made her dangerous, because Mary Meyer was a woman who refused to be controlled, and that was about to catch the attention of the most powerful man in the world. January 20th, 1961, John F. Kennedy became the 35th President of the United States. America had a new king, and Washington had a new court. They called it Camelot. But the real power in Washington didn't live at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It lived in Georgetown, in the elegant townhouses along N Street and Q Street, where senators, journalists, and CIA officials gathered for cocktails and secrets. And at the center of it all was Mary's sister, Toni. Toni Pinchot had married Ben Bradley, journalist, future executive editor of the Washington Post, and one of JFK's closest friends. The Bradleys lived just a few doors down from the Kennedys in Georgetown. Their dinner parties were legendary. Cabinet secretaries, Supreme Court justices. The Georgetown set, where policy was made over martinis. And Mary? She was right in the middle of it all. Sister to Toni, friend to Ben, known to Jackie Kennedy, former wife of a CIA operative. She moved through these circles effortlessly. Everyone knew Mary, everyone liked Mary, and everyone told Mary their secrets. But Mary's connection to John Kennedy went deeper than Georgetown cocktail parties. They'd known each other since childhood. Their families had summered at the same Massachusetts resorts. They'd danced at the same debutante balls. When Jack Kennedy looked at Mary Meyer, he didn't just see a beautiful woman. He saw someone who'd known him before he was president, someone who understood his world, someone who was his equal. In early 1962, the affair began, but this wasn't like Kennedy's other dalliances with starlets and secretaries. Those were about conquest. Mary was different. She was an intellectual, an artist, a woman of substance, and according to those who knew, Jack Kennedy was genuinely in love with her. White House gate logs show she visited often, sometimes several times a week, always in the afternoon, always discreet. Jackie was traveling or in Virginia. The meetings were arranged through a trusted aide. Mary would walk from Georgetown through the gate up to the residence. And for a few hours, the President of the United States could just be Jack. And Mary? Mary had the ear of the most powerful man on earth. What happened during those visits would eventually get Mary killed. They'd swim in the White House pool. They'd talk for hours. And Mary introduced Jack Kennedy to something that terrified the CIA. She introduced him to LSD. This was 1962. LSD wasn't illegal yet. Harvard researchers like Timothy Leary were studying it seriously as a tool for consciousness expansion, for creativity, for breaking through psychological barriers. And Mary Meyer was fascinated. She'd tried it herself. And she believed it could change how people thought about war, about peace, about the human condition. Timothy Leary later confirmed that Mary came to him for guidance. She told him she was part of a group, influential women in Washington, who wanted to turn on the men in power, to open their minds, to make them question the Cold War, the arms race, the paranoia that gripped America. And according to Leary, Mary told him she'd already turned on a very important man in Washington. She wouldn't say who. She didn't have to. Whether the LSD directly influenced Kennedy's thinking, we'll never know for certain. But something did change. In June 1963, Kennedy gave a speech at American University that stunned the political establishment. He called for peace with the Soviet Union. He spoke of ending the Cold War. He said, "If we cannot end now our differences, at least we can help make the world safe for diversity." The Pentagon was furious. The CIA was alarmed. Military contractors saw their profits threatened. And Mary Meyer? She was there in the background, whispering in the president's ear, telling him about peace, about consciousness, about another way forward. And she wrote it all down. Every conversation, every idea, every name, in her diary locked in her Georgetown studio. November 22, 1963, John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. Mary was devastated. She'd lost her lover. But the diary remained, and in that diary was everything. Everything someone might kill to keep secret. Nearly a year passed. Mary grieved privately. She painted. She kept to herself more than usual. But she was still Mary Meyer, still confident, still connected. She still knew everyone, and everyone still wondered what she knew about Jack Kennedy. Monday, October 12, 1964. A perfect autumn day in Georgetown. Temperature in the low 70s. Blue sky. The leaves just starting to turn. Mary spent the morning in her studio, painting. Around noon, she had lunch. And just after 12:30, she put on her light blue Angora sweater, her blue slacks, and headed out for her daily walk. The Chesapeake and Ohio Canal towpath was her sanctuary. She walked it almost every day. It ran right behind her studio. Peaceful, quiet, just the sound of the canal water and the birds. On this Monday afternoon, there were other people around. A few joggers, some students. Nobody noticed anything unusual. At approximately 12:45 p.m., Mary was walking west on the towpath, about 100 yards past the bridge at 34th Street. She was alone. That's when he approached her. Henry Wiggins was working on a car near the canal. He heard a woman scream, "Someone help me!" He looked toward the towpath. He saw a man standing over a woman. The man was black, wearing a light-colored jacket, dark cap. Wiggins saw him raise his arm. 2 shots rang out. The woman fell. The man stood over her for a moment. Then he calmly walked away toward the canal. Wiggins called the police immediately. They arrived within minutes. Mary Pinchot Meyer was dead. Shot once in the head at close range, shot once in the back. No robbery. Her wallet was untouched. This was execution. And within hours, the news spread through Georgetown like wildfire. Mary Meyer had been murdered. Police launched a massive search. Within an hour, they found someone. Raymond Crump, Jr., a 25-year-old black man, was discovered on the riverbank about a quarter-mile from the murder scene. He was soaking wet, his clothes drenched. He claimed he'd been fishing and fell in. There was no fishing rod, no tackle, no weapon. But he matched the general description. He was black. That seemed to be enough. Raymond Crump was unemployed, father of 5, lived in a poor neighborhood. He had no connection to Mary Meyer, no motive, no history of violence. But in 1964, Washington, he fit a profile. And that was enough to charge him with murder. His trial began in July 1965. He was defended by Dovie Roundtree, one of Washington's most respected black attorneys, and she systematically destroyed the prosecution's case. The witness descriptions didn't match Crump. Witnesses said the killer was 5'8" to 5'10" and wore a light jacket. Crump was 5'3", and his jacket was dark. The murder weapon was never found, despite searches with metal detectors and divers. The prosecution claimed Crump threw the gun in the canal, but police searched that canal for days. Nothing. They claimed blood on Crump's clothing matched the victim, but there was barely any blood, no gunpowder residue, no fingerprints, no physical evidence linking him to the crime. The case was circumstantial at best, racist at worst. On July 30th, 1965, after just 11 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict: not guilty. Raymond Crump walked free. The courtroom erupted. Justice, they said, had been served. But had it? Raymond Crump was innocent. But that meant someone else killed Mary Meyer, someone who got away with it. So who killed Mary Pinchot Meyer? That question would haunt Washington for decades, but some people already knew the answer, and they were working very hard to make sure no one else ever found out. The day Mary died, her sister Toni Bradley got a phone call. Mary was dead, murdered. Toni was devastated. But she remembered something Mary had told her years earlier. If anything ever happens to me, there's a diary in my studio. Find it. Toni and Ben went to Mary's studio that evening. They searched everywhere. Toni knew Mary kept it locked in her desk, but when they opened the drawer, nothing. The diary was gone. Someone had already been there. They later learned who. James Jesus Angleton, chief of CIA counterintelligence, one of the most powerful and paranoid men in American intelligence. He'd been there that afternoon, searching Mary's studio, looking for the diary, and he'd found it. Who was James Jesus Angleton? He was the ghost of the CIA, the spy master who trusted no one. He'd helped create Israel's Mossad. He ran operations against the Soviets. He believed there were double agents everywhere. And he was obsessed with protecting CIA secrets. But why was he personally involved in a murder case? Why did he care about Mary Meyer's diary? Toni and Ben confronted him. Angleton admitted he had the diary. He said Mary had asked him to destroy it if anything happened to her. That was a lie. Mary barely knew Angleton, but he promised to turn the diary over to the family. He never did. Weeks later, Angleton called Toni. He said he'd burned the diary. It was gone. Forever. What was in that diary? We'll never know for certain, but we can guess. Details of her affair with President Kennedy, conversations about his plans to break up the CIA after the Bay of Pigs disaster, his secret negotiations for peace, the LSD experiments, names of others involved, a roadmap of power and secrets in 1960s Washington. All of it gone, burned, erased. Or so they claimed. But here's the thing about secrets. They never really stay buried. Not completely. Remember Cord Meyer, Mary's ex-husband, the CIA operative? By 1964, he'd risen to become one of the agency's top officials, running covert operations worldwide. He reported directly to James Jesus Angleton, and he had reasons to hate Mary. The divorce had been bitter, Cord had been unfaithful, Mary had been unhappy. But when she learned about Mary's affair with Kennedy, Cord was humiliated. Everyone in Georgetown knew. Everyone in the CIA knew. His ex-wife was sleeping with the president who was threatening to dismantle the agency Cord had devoted his life to. And then there was MK-Ultra, the CIA's secret mind control program. They'd been experimenting with LSD since the 1950s, dosing unwitting Americans, trying to develop techniques for interrogation and control. When the CIA learned that Mary Meyer was giving LSD to the president, that she was trying to expand his consciousness to make him question the Cold War, that was a security breach of the highest order. Kennedy had already threatened the CIA after the Bay of Pigs disaster in 1961. He'd said he wanted to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. He'd fired Allen Dulles, the CIA director. He'd started back-channel negotiations with the Soviets without telling the agency. And now he was experimenting with mind-altering drugs with a woman who was the ex-wife of a CIA operative? The agency saw Mary Meyer as a threat, a vulnerability, a problem. On November 22, 1963, Kennedy was assassinated. Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested. The Warren Commission would later conclude Oswald acted alone. But questions lingered. CIA connections, mysterious deaths of witnesses. And Mary Meyer knew things. She'd been intimate with Kennedy during this period. She knew his plans. She knew who he trusted, who he feared. For 11 months after Kennedy's death, Mary lived with those secrets. Who did she talk to? Who did she confide in? The CIA couldn't know, couldn't control. And in October 1964, less than a year after Kennedy's murder, Mary Meyer was executed on a jogging path in Georgetown. Coincidence or cleanup? Look closely at the murder investigation and things don't add up. Multiple witnesses reported seeing a man in a light jacket. The man police arrested wore dark clothes. Witnesses described someone 5'8" to 5'10". Crump was 5'3". Some witnesses reported seeing 2 men near the crime scene. Police only looked for one. The murder weapon was never found despite an extensive search. But here's something strange. Police claim the killer threw it in the canal. The canal was only 4 feet deep. They searched it with metal detectors, with divers, with draining sections. Nothing? So where did the gun go? Unless it was never thrown in the canal at all. Unless someone else took it. In the weeks and months after Mary's death, her studio was broken into multiple times. Nothing valuable was taken. Just papers, documents, paintings. Friends reported being followed. Phone calls. Questions from men who wouldn't identify themselves. Mary's address book disappeared. Her correspondence gone. And then there's Ben Bradlee, the man who would become one of journalism's greatest figures, the editor who published the Pentagon Papers, who stood up to Nixon during Watergate, who built his reputation on seeking truth. Why did Ben Bradlee stay silent about Mary Meyer for decades? Why didn't he investigate? Why didn't he push for answers? What did he know that he couldn't say? Because in 1964 Washington, everyone was connected. Everyone owed favors. Everyone had secrets. The CIA had infiltrated the media, the universities, the political establishment. Operation Mockingbird, the CIA's program to influence American media, was in full swing. Journalists were on the CIA payroll. Editors killed stories. And everyone in Georgetown knew some things you just didn't talk about. Mary Meyer's murder was one of them. For years, silence. The official story held. Random murder. Wrong place, wrong time. Case closed. But as the decades passed, people started talking. Deathbed confessions, leaked documents, witnesses who'd been silent out of fear. They were old now, dying, and they wanted the truth told. E. Howard Hunt, CIA operative, Watergate burglar. In 2007, dying of cancer, Hunt began revealing secrets. He claimed there was a conspiracy to kill Kennedy, named names, talked about CIA operations, and though he didn't mention Mary Meyer specifically, he confirmed what many suspected. The agency eliminated threats, permanently. Timothy Leary, before his death in 1996, went public with his story. Mary Meyer had come to him, had told him about turning on powerful people in Washington, had mentioned a very important man. Leary believed she meant Kennedy. And he believed she'd been killed for it. In the 1990s, as the Cold War ended and KGB archives opened, Soviet defectors mentioned something curious. A file on the Meyer operation, an American woman connected to Kennedy, eliminated by U.S. intelligence. The details were vague, but the implication was clear. Even the Soviets knew what had happened. Then in 2012, a book changed everything. Mary's Mosaic by Peter Janney. Janney wasn't some conspiracy theorist. His father had been a CIA officer, a colleague of James Angleton. Janney had grown up in this world, and he spent decades researching Mary's death. What he found was chilling. Witnesses who saw multiple men at the scene. Evidence of a professional hit. CIA fingerprints all over the cover-up. Janney concluded what many had long suspected. Mary Meyer wasn't killed by Raymond Crump. She was assassinated, and the CIA made it happen. Look at the murder through a professional lens. 2 shots, one to the head, one to the back. Close range. Execution style. The killer approached calmly. Did the job, left calmly. No panic, no robbery, no sexual assault. This wasn't a random attack. This was a professional hit. Multiple witnesses reported seeing 2 men in the area. Not 1, 2. One matching the general description used to arrest Crump, but another, taller, white, wearing different clothes. Police focused on one description, ignored the other. Why? Raymond Crump was the perfect patsy. Poor, black, in the wrong place at the wrong time. In 1964, Washington, would anyone question his arrest? Would anyone look deeper? He was supposed to be convicted, but Dovey Roundtree was too good. The evidence was too weak, and Crump walked free. The operation had failed, but Mary was still dead. The CIA had conducted assassinations before, Operation PB Success in Guatemala, plots against Castro, the Phoenix program in Vietnam. They had the capability, they had the operatives, and they had the motive. Mary Meyer knew too much, had loved the wrong man, had kept the wrong diary, and in the world of intelligence, that made her expendable. Cord Meyer had the motive, personal and professional. James Angleton had the means. He ran counterintelligence operations. Together, they had the opportunity. Angleton was in Mary's studio within hours. Too fast, too prepared. He knew where to look. How did he know she was dead so quickly? Who told him? Unless he already knew what had happened. And Mary wasn't alone. In the 3 years following Kennedy's assassination, 18 material witnesses died. Heart attacks, suicides, car accidents, murders. The odds of that happening naturally? Astronomically small. There was a pattern, a cleanup operation, and Mary Pinchot Meyer was part of it. They couldn't have her talking, couldn't have her diary revealing what Kennedy had planned, what he'd known, what he'd feared. So they silenced her. Forever. So what was in Mary's diary that was worth killing for? We can piece it together from what we know, from witnesses, from Kennedy's own actions, from the historical record. The affair itself, dates, times, conversations. Imagine a diary that documented the president's private thoughts, his doubts about the Cold War, his frustration with his military advisors, his plans that he couldn't make public yet. That alone would be explosive. The LSD experiments. Mary documented everything. How many times? Who else was involved? What did Kennedy experience? What did it change about his thinking? The CIA was running MK Ultra, secret illegal drug experiments, and here was the president's mistress doing the same thing, but with the president himself. The implications were staggering. Kennedy's peace plans, his secret negotiations with Khrushchev and Castro, his intention to withdraw from Vietnam, His plan to break up the CIA? These weren't public yet, but Kennedy confided in Mary, and Mary wrote it down. A roadmap to Kennedy's true intentions, intentions that threatened the military-industrial complex, the CIA, everyone profiting from the Cold War. And the names. That might have been the most dangerous part. Who else was in Mary's circle? Who else was experimenting with consciousness? Who else questioned the Cold War orthodoxy? Who in Georgetown and the CIA and the government was having these conversations? That diary was a liability list, and when Kennedy died, that list became a target list. Mary Meyer's name was on it. So which president got away with murder? That's the question, isn't it? The title of the story. And the answer? It's more complicated than you might think. Was it John F. Kennedy? His affair with Mary made her a target. His secrets endangered her. His plans to change Washington signed her death warrant. He didn't pull the trigger. He was already dead. But his legacy killed her. The secrets he shared. The trust he placed in her. The diary she kept because she loved him. Kennedy's ghost got Mary Meyer killed. Or was it Lyndon Johnson? He became president after Kennedy's assassination. He knew about the affairs. He knew about the secrets. He had every reason to keep Mary Meyer quiet. Any scandal involving Kennedy reflected on the office itself. Any diary revealing presidential secrets threatened national security. LBJ had the power. He had the motive. And he had the CIA at his disposal. Or maybe it wasn't a president at all. Maybe it was the invisible government, the CIA, the military-industrial complex, the shadow state that runs beneath elected power. They didn't need a president's permission. They had their own reasons, their own methods, their own justice. The truth is probably this. Mary Meyer was killed by the system, by a power structure that protects itself, that eliminates threats, that operates above the law. No single president ordered it, but presidential power created the conditions for it. Presidential secrets made it necessary, and presidential privilege ensured no one would ever be held accountable. That's how a president gets away with murder, not by ordering it, but by creating a world where it can happen and no one can touch you. Today, the C&O Canal towpath is still there. People jog past the spot where Mary Meyer died. Most have no idea what happened there 60 years ago. There's no marker, no memorial, just a path beside the water where a woman was executed for knowing too much. Mary's sons grew up without their mother, without answers, without justice. One became an artist like Mary. Another struggled with the weight of it all. They lived their lives in the shadow of an unsolved murder, knowing their mother had been killed, knowing it wasn't random, but never knowing who or why for certain. Georgetown closed ranks. The people who knew Mary, who'd been to her parties, who'd seen her with Kennedy. They stayed quiet. That was the code. You don't talk about these things. You don't ask questions. You don't disturb the peace. And so Mary's murder became just another tragedy, another unsolved case, another secret buried in the foundations of American power. Documents have trickled out over the years, through Freedom of Information Act requests, through deathbed confessions, through historians who won't let it go. But the full truth? Still classified, still protected. Files that won't be opened for decades more. If ever. Mary Meyer's case asks a question that's still relevant today. Can the powerful ever be held accountable? When someone dies inconveniently, when secrets need protecting, when the machinery of government decides someone is a threat, can justice ever prevail, or do the powerful always get away with it? 60 years later, we still don't have a good answer. But here's what they couldn't kill. They couldn't kill Mary's art. Her paintings survive. Bold, colorful, defiant. They hang in galleries and private collections, each one a reminder that Mary Pinchot Meyer was here, that she created, that she mattered. They couldn't kill her story. Every few years, another book, another article, another documentary like this one. New witnesses come forward. New evidence emerges. The story refuses to die because the questions refuse to die. Who killed Mary Meyer? Why? Who gave the order? Who covered it up? And they couldn't kill the truth. Not completely, because here you are, 60 years later, learning her name, learning her story, asking the same questions. That's how truth survives, through people who refuse to forget, through people who care about justice, even decades later, through people like you. Mary Pinchot Meyer walked this path for the last time on October 12, 1964. She was 43 years old, an artist, a mother, a woman who loved a president and paid for it with her life. They shot her. They burned her diary. They buried her secrets. But they couldn't bury her because we remember. And as long as we remember, they didn't get away with it. Not completely. Not forever. Rest in peace, Mary Pinchot Meyer. Your story is told. Your life is remembered. And the truth keeps fighting its way to the surface. If this story affected you, I need you to do something. Don't let this be the last time you think about Mary Meyer. Research her, read about her, share this video with someone who needs to see it. Drop a comment below telling me what you think happened. Who do you believe killed Mary? Was it the CIA? Was it something else? I read every comment and I want to hear your theories. And remember, this isn't ancient history. This is your history. This happened in your lifetime or in your parents' lifetime. These were real people, real crimes, real injustice. And the people who did this, they hoped you'd forget. Don't forget. I'll see you in the next investigation.